Throughout Bhagavad Gita, we will be talking about the movement of the soul. So today I am talking about just the dying part, what happens at death, and the movement of the soul after it dies. So for this, I have um, referred to the Brhadaranyaka Upanishad, and then this one called Bardo Tordo, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and the Iliad, and finally there is a book called Journey of Souls. So these books I have referred, and primarily I will be using the dharmic and the Tibetan way of approaching death because there is a lot of similarity in the way they deal with the subject. So the first thing that happens is as death approaches, there is uncertainty. We are not sure that it is going to happen. And this is because we are constantly in the world of duality, good, bad, right, wrong. So is it happening? Is it not happening? The uncertainty of existence is what we completely, we are continuously stuck in that sphere. So there is no clarity that it is actually going to happen. Then what happens is that we experience the movement of the various primordial elements. Right now, I'm talking about what Bardo Tordol is talking about, and that is that the heaviness is felt when the earth merges into water. That is, when the earth element merges into water, we begin to get heavier. Which is why, if you will notice, when we try to handle dead bodies, they seem to be very heavy. That is because the earth element has merged into the water element. When the water element merges into the fire, circulation stops. So the samana vayu, the circulatory movement of prana stops. When fire merges into air, the feeling of warmth and growth stops. That is the udana vayu. The feeling of growth, the feeling of warmth begins to stop, gets dissolved. And when air dissolves into space, the physical realm, the in understanding of the existence of the physical realm dissolves. So this means that the Annamaya Kosha completely gets dissolved. Finally, when space dissolves into the Sushumna Nadi, prana leaves the body. That is, you see, what happens is that we have a central nadi called the Sushumna Nadi, we have the Ida and the Pingala Nadi. These are the three main nadis which run in the body. This is the solar nadi. The solar nadi is the moon or the Chandra nadi. So Ida and Pingala are the moon and the sun nadi, and depending on the karma, some one of there is an imbalance in the nadis. And these, when our prana begins to leave the body, it will dissolve into the central nadi, which is slightly before the spine, and it will come out of the sushumna, the sahasrara. It's not necessary that it should come out of the sahasrara. Depending on how the prana leaves the body, if we are not completely practiced yogis, it can come out of the mouth, it can come out of one of the other nine apertures, the ear, the anus, and other things, depending on where the prana moves out of the body. Now, in Brhadaranyaka Upanishad, what they say in the, I'm quoting 4.4.1, when the self becomes weak, as it were, the organs come to it. Completely withdrawing these particles of light, it comes to the heart. When the presiding deity of the eye turns back from all sides, man fails to notice color. So there is a lot of similarity between Brhadaranyaka Upanishad and Bharata Tordol, except that the wordings are different. Similarly, the eye becomes united and the people say he does not see. The nose becomes united and they say he does not smell. The tongue becomes united and they say he does not taste. The vocal organ becomes united and they say he does not speak. The ears become united and they say he does not hear. The manas, the cognitive apparatus, becomes united and they say he does not think. The skin becomes united and they say he cannot touch. The intellect, the buddhi, becomes united and they say he does not know. He is not able to differentiate. The top of the heart brightens. Though that brightened top, through that brightened top, that self departs either through the eye or through the head. When the atma departs, it pulls the prana out and all the organs fail. Now, this is the key thing, that this is how life moves out of the body. But what the Brhadaranyaka Upanishad also says in a very interesting way in 4.4.3 is that just as a leech supported on a straw goes to the end of it, takes hold of another support and contracts itself, so does the self throw this body aside, make it senseless, and take hold of another support, the contract itself. So, what it says is that the atma goes to another body, discarding the old body like just like an envelope. Now, let us look at let's take a synopsis of what we have seen so far. During death, the body loses its motility or prana and gets separated from the soul. Now, in our system, the Indic system, dahanam is provided by the karta using aupasangni. Now, the interesting thing here is the karta is merely an executor. He's a contract employee, if you want to call it that. The actual dahanam is done by the person who has died. So, for instance, when I die, whoever performs my last rite is only a contract employee of mine. The actual last rite is done by me myself. This is a very important distinction which many people don't understand. That we perform our own cremation through the agni that we got when we got married. That is, when we get married, there is an agni that is given to us, and that is why we get married in the girl's house. In the girl's house, when we get married, the bride's mother gives the first gravya agni or the house fire from her house for us to perform our first homa. We take that fire and we perform what is called aupasana. That agni is then becomes the gravya agni of the bride, which is why dharma is controlled by the bride, by the girl, by the mother. Then that aupasana agni, actually we are supposed to do aupasanam every day, but we don't. That is why during Shraddham, first we do Punyahavasanam, then we do Aupasanam, and then only we do the Shraddham. So we do Prayashchittam for not having done Aupasanam for so many days. But that Aupasana Agni is the most critical Agni that we have. And that Aupasana Agni then is used to cremate. So I will be cremated by my own Aupasana Agni. And that also is the time when the Vivaha Sanskara is over. So the Vivaha Sanskara is over when one of the two partners dies first and performs his or her own cremation. Now, after that happens, the Sanchayanam is done. Now, Sanchayanam, according to our system, is you see what happens is that when the cremation happens, lot of there's a lot of debris that is collected. That is ash and bones and things like that. For this to be disposed, it is made into a body and then it is cooled down and then it is disposed by visarjanam, that is in water. What we are doing is that every evidence that the body exists is being disposed when the Sanchayanam happens. Once the Sanchayanam is completed, then that soul is a disoriented soul because it has died, it has lost its sheath, its body. Now it has not got any place, which is why I keep talking about Vijnanamaya Kosha. When we talk about Vijnanamaya Kosha, I keep talking about our attachment to various other koshas. These koshas are the impediment we have, and because we lose those koshas, we become a disoriented soul. So the karta has to now, because when we become disoriented, we are not really listening or talking to anybody. So the karta creates an alternate placeholder called pAshanasthApanam. So a stone is taken and it is embedded in a flower pot, and for that he gives water and till every day. So for 9 days, which represents the 9 months of the soul, this person does, the karta does the the tarpana to the pretam. Pretam means disoriented soul. Now, on the 10th day, the soul is then made into what is called Bhaudika Sharira. So that soul is now given a food which has no salt, and this is called the Yatana Shariram. The the Karta offers food with no salt called Prabhuta Bali, and the soul then gets a shock that it is, but it has got certain amount of orientation by now, and so it leaves the physical realm. On the 11th day, the Karta does Punya Vachanam for himself, and then he does Vrishaba Utsarjanam and other various um, um, rites which tell the soul to now start moving towards pitru loka. On 12th day, the karta merges the preta with the ancestors, and one of the top ancestors moves out. Like, for instance, when my father died, his great grandfather moved out into Swarga Loga, and my father went into that particular, into the slot of the pitru. Now, thereafter, the karta performs grekim and the everything is back to normal. Why am I talking about this? The issue here is most of our ancient texts are clear about the dissolution of prana at death. That it is prana which drives the physical body and the atma also. And when the atma leaves the body, the prana also leaves. Now, what is where there is a confusion is that how soon does the atma take on a new body? Now, the first question is, does when the yatana shariram leaves the body, does it immediately go to another body? Our texts do not suggest this. Our texts say that there is a rebuilding process. But there is one clear message. Now, okay, no, it's not a clear message, it's still confusion. The confusion here is, does the soul go to the pitru loka and then get a new body, or is there a split? One goes to the pitru loka and becomes a part of the pitrus, whereas the soul otherwise carries on its own journey and relates to its own self, its own prarabdha karma, and then comes back and takes on a new envelope. My own opinion is that the souls diverge because The reason I say this is that if it was to happen that the soul was to go to the to the the pitru loka and then wait for everything to happen again, then it could be very long before the soul is able to get out, go into Swarga Loka, enjoy the fruits of its tapas, and then come back. My view is that these two are not related because then it gives the soul greater flexibility to reconcile its debt and come back. In Brhadaranyaka Upanishad, there is clear indication that there is a rebuild process, that the soul goes into a rebuild which involves the Pitrus, the various other rishis, the great Maharishis, and then the primary elements are manas and ahankara are all reconciled. Our 10th day also, 10th day ceremony is also suggests that the atma shariram moves into out of the physical realm into another place. So in Bardo Tordol as well as Brhadaranyaka Upanishad, there is almost no difference of opinion. Also, the book, this book which I have been reading, I have read many times. This is written by a MD, a doctor, who out of who is a psychotherapist, and he has used hypnosis to do regression of chronic psychological defects or problems, and he has regressed people into afterlife. So the reading from the various interviews that he has given or he has obtained from various patients is that the soul definitely goes to a central place where there is a reconciliation. And the reconciliation happens, and then the soul then comes back to earth and it is able to live a new life. The only question is to what extent is there a connection between the old life and the new life? Now, the key thing here is that is something that we've been always discussing in our classes, and that is in Brhadaranyaka Upanishad 4.4.6, which says that he who is free from desires, the objects of those desires have been attained. To those whom all objects of desires are but the self, the organs do not depart. Being but the Brahman, he is merged in the Brahman. So this is something that is always been clear for us, and I think we've been always talking about this, and then even in chapter three, Sri Krishna talks about it. That for as long as you are in the state of Stita Prajna, you will never have to come back and live another life. So here I'm going to stop my understanding of death because I'm not going into how the creation of another soul happens. So I'm opening the house again for discussion. Any questions? So now my understanding is this. From what I have been discussing with various Vedic scholars and things like that, the day of a Pitru, one one moon, the ascending moon of a Pitru, ascending moon is the day of the Pitru, and the descending moon is the night of the Pitru, and midday is Amavasya, and that is when the Pitru is really hungry. So when you do Tarpanam, you do it with til. Basically, you have to give water to the Pitru. And the til is only there to ensure that those Pitrus whom you are calling, only that Pitru gets that water. It is so to prevent, because there are a lot of souls which are not getting food and they are all hungry and they all come wherever Tarpanam is going on in the hope that they will get this particular Tarpana, I mean this particular water and get assuaged. but you use till to ensure that your pitrus get that particular offering. The first 12 days that we do, we are actually supposed to do it every day. But very often, what people do is they do it on only from ninth. But that means that for 9 days, the pretam is actually disoriented and it is left to suffer on its own. See, there are two things that the pretam experiences: lajja, because its clothes are burnt, and the second is the heat from the dahanam. So um, when we do the pindadanam, we say dahana janita daha tapa upashamanartham. Dahana janita, the dahana that you have experienced, dahana janita upasamanartham. Upasamanartham means to ameliorate. Daha tapa upashamanartham tila udagam tarpayami. That is til and udagam. Udagam is the cloth, the shroud cloth. So you use the shroud cloth with till and till to give tarpanam. So that means that the soul is getting the is getting assuaged for having endured the loss of the dress and the heat of the cremation. Now, what happens is that we do it for 12 days, and on the 13th day, there's Gracium. But that is done because very often it sometimes happens that people cannot do the Masikam and the Sodakumbam on the as normal. And because people cannot do it, what happens is that they get we do it in the first 12 days, but you are supposed to do it for 12 months. The first 9 days represent the 9 days in the womb for the soul, and it is always done by the karta when he is wet. That represents the existence of the soul in the womb itself. But it is meant to be done for an entire year, and then the final Unamasigam is done, and things like that happen. And this is the logic that we don't generally, we sometimes miss it out, and that's why we miss out the various functions through the year, or we are not able to do it. And to ensure that it is done, we do it in the first 12 days. The thing is that it does not make sense that it goes to the pitru loka and then it's a static process. It is like a hierarchical process. Our souls don't follow those kind of hierarchy. So if it has to be karmic, then that means that when the karma has the abhishapa or the ashirvada has expired, the soul must come back for new anubhava. If that is the case, then it means that the soul actually goes splits into two. One that is come as our pitru, and another which is its own karma. Because see, like for instance, we don't incur karma only as a family member. No, we incur karma with others also. You and I are incurring karma. Where is the family associated with this? It is not. So it doesn't make sense that we should only be attached to the family. But family is, see, the debt of birth. We owe a debt of birth to our parents. That debt of birth we give up, or we compensate by doing proper cremation and tarpanam afterwards. Because and the debt of bringing us up, our parents have brought us up. The debt of that we give up, or we recompensate by looking after them when they are old. So that is how karma is balanced. That is why when you don't look after your parents, that karma will always come, and the understanding is that the karma will come, and you have to. So the debt of birth we compensate by debt of cremation and by doing tarpanam until for as long as we are alive. The debt of being of them looking after us, we repay by looking after them when they are old. So that is how, that is a major part of our life. So that is one thing that cannot be changed, and that is why there is a pitru. But our own karma, which we generate in our interactions with others, that has to be repaid in some form or the other. And so we take a different path in order to, you know, um, in order to recompense those that we owe our karma to. There are a couple of, you raised some fantastic questions. The first is the donation of the body to the hospital. Now, when we do the cremation, we do cremation as we say that, we do prayaschitta. Prayaschitta is for, you remember one thing, the cremation is a yajna or a sacrifice. So the body that you give for sacrifice has to be perfect. So we do prayaschitta for, if the body has died on a bed, for that there is a prayaschitta. For, so we do punya avachana, then we do prayashchittam, and then we do for, wrong time, for if it is not in Uttarayan, then we have to do a prayashchittam. So each of these prayashchittam the karta has to do. And then the aupasangni is done, and then the cremation is done. Now, for all practical purposes, the body is just a tool. And all this prayaschitam we do is for disposal of the body. But that does not mean that the ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th cannot be done, should not be done. Number one. Number two, the karta's control of the body is only up to the moment the dahanam is done, because after Sanchayanam, the karta gets control of the soul to make sure that the soul is kept in is kept in peace. The third thing, since you are the only child, your responsibility is only up to the extent that you can control. The rest of the control is with the dayadis, that is, those of the same gotra. You don't have any control over this. Lastly, so the dayadis have to do this. Now you are saying that Gujaratis don't do this. Now remember one thing: there are two types of people we have. One is called Gauda Desha, the other one is called Dravida Desha. Dravida Desha is Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra, and Tamil Telugu. I mean, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So, Pancha Dravida Desha. Now, I used to go to Jamnagar very often, and once when I went during Amavasya, I went to Jamnagar town. There was a temple and there was a purohit. I did the tarpanam with that particular priest. Now, it is possible there are people there. Now, the next thing is that even if you are in the south, you can use any priest to perform the shraddha. It doesn't matter. More or less, the procedure is the same. So you should not worry about it being only it only being a, what do you call, a South Indian priest or a North Indian. It doesn't matter. What is important is performing the shraddha. No, you can use a Tamilian priest. There's no problem. The problem is that we think that we control our destiny, which is not correct. That is the debt that we owe to our parents. They cannot say by not doing, like for instance, I was in Mumbai. There was a family, and they said that they just literally put the body into the crematorium like it was a piece of log and finished it off. For as long as the person is alive, he has one particular state of consciousness. The minute the person dies, the person loses that right in that consciousness. He becomes a pitru or a pretam with its own characteristics. And the pitru has got its own requirements. So let me give you another example. My father's younger brother has three daughters. He doesn't believe in any of this stuff also. So when he died, he said, "I just burn me up like a log." So I told my sisters, I said, listen, this is not correct. That soul which was alive had certain opinions. That is its opinion. Once it has become a pitru or pretam, it is still a disoriented soul. We have to guide it to its pitru loka. It cannot just say that I will go. I mean, you cannot let it go in the way it has to go. It has to be guided to its destination because it does not know the path. If it has a guru, like for instance, some gurus, both Brhadaranyaka Upanishad and Bhargava Tordol talk about gurus who will guide the soul to its destination. But the soul has no control or the person ceases to exist when the soul moves out of the body. The responsibility of the karta continues to remain. Now, in your case, because you're the girl, there is no such major impediment. But for your in laws, it becomes important for you to do. Every part of your body has its own identity. The temple has its own identity. It has a Purusha. Each part of us, we are continuously getting regenerated as a person. So we are actually continuously regenerated as individuals. So there should be no surprise to you that you can have multiple identities. The identity you display with me will be different from the identity you display with your husband or the identity you display with your children. Each of those is a different identity, but it is the same person. That identity is finished. The identity of that as your parent is over. The pitru that is there is for you. That soul is now finished. It's gone. It's gone on its own way. The pitru that exists there is your pitru. Similarly, the relationship between birth and death comes from the womb. So when you are born, you are born from a parent, and there that parent goes away. The debt that you have is yours. That goes into the hierarchy that exists. But that soul itself has another existence. It has an existence of its own karmas, which it has created. So when it is born, be born out of a womb, and it will live according to its karma. There is a soul. The karma is that of a parent. So it takes the role of a karma. I mean, it does the role of a karma as a parent. We have the role of a child. So that relationship which we have becomes the pitru child relationship. But the soul then has to move on. It has created, for example, if the debt between you and your father is no longer existing, you won't have to do karma. The debt of birth, you have to repay by doing shraddham. You're still having physical placements in your mind. No, this is not a physical placement. It is not a psychological placement. This is a purusha. This is an identity. The identity is twofold. One is of your parent, one is of itself. This identity of a parent is fulfilled for as long as you can think. That is why we have only three, right? Maximum you can remember your great grandfather. You don't remember your great great grandfather because you probably never saw that person. Because you are not really letting go of your vasanas, the experience is still there. The experience of heat is still there. So the identity is for as long as the aham is there. The aham is there in the physical as well as psychological plane. For as long as the identity is there and it is still attached to the I, what happens is that the experience is there. When the experience is there, even if when the body goes into the furnace, it experiences the heat and the lajja of having lost its body or its clothes. It is an identity. It is an identity. Again, you are getting confused between the physical and um, the identity. The identity is the experiencer. For as long as you are experiencing, now you are experiencing confusion, you are experiencing anger, you are experiencing frustration. the inability to all that. There is only a physical part, no, that goes into the karana sharira also. What is me? Who am I? What am I experiencing? That I that is experiencing, for as long as it is experiencing all of these emotions of confusion and anger and frustration and grief and sadness, that confusion and that is being carried by the I, no, by the atma. So that will experience the heat also. It will experience the disconcertedness. It will disorientation after it's got lost its body, because the body is, it identifies itself with the body. Why do they keep three pidas? Because if there is even the slightest possibility of you having known your great grandfather or great great grandfather, that great great grandfather has an association with you, and so he should be given till and water. That is the only reason. There is no other reason. The point is that for as long as that identity has somebody associated with it, it must be given till and water, which is one of the reasons why I'm again saying those that are dead and have nobody who remembers them, if you continue to keep them alive in this Trishanku, in this world, they will not get closure. Like Mahatma Gandhi is probably not getting closure. Now, who remembers him as an individual? Nobody remembers him, no. So we don't know the soul, the person who, anybody who knew him, they are all dead. So when you continue to keep him on the street corner and have crows crapping on him, it becomes very sad, no? That identity is being subjected to humiliation. On the 12th day, when that happens, a Brahmana comes, he takes, you're actually telling him that you are now, you have been there for 3 generations. Now please go to Swarga-loka and enjoy yourself. After that, that soul is finished. It goes to Swarga Loka, and then whatever has to happen will happen to it. So your Atma attaining salvation is existent on this earth. Once you die, you don't have any control over it, no? Because at the end of the day, your actions are only when you're cognizant of your actions can you control it. Once you die, that soul no longer has control, right? It becomes a disoriented soul because you have been associated with the body. Your association with, you are saying I am responsible for my own happiness. My happiness and my sadness, everything is associated with me. That means this prana, this manas, this my association with everybody around me, how I relate to everybody, everything. Now, the definition of happiness itself is very different for different people. Santosham can be that I will be happy with whatever I get. Santosham will also mean that I need a certain specific kind of expectation that has to be met. The point is that all of this is dependent on the person. When the person's body is lost and becomes disoriented, that person still needs somebody to guide them. At that time, you don't have control, no? That control is with somebody else. Am I making sense? All Hindus are supposed to do Tarpanam on every Amavasya and Shraddham on the Tithi of the person. In New Zealand, Maoris have also a similar way, but they have and all that, they have a very different way of talking to their ancestors. But they go to the grave and they will talk about all the things that they do in their life. They relate to their ancestors in a very different way, but there is a relationship. In Vietnam, there is a full month, somewhat like our Pitru Paksh, where they will talk to their ancestors. Let me give you another example. In Homer's Iliad, okay, many of you may have heard of this. There is a war fought between the Greeks and the Trojans. Now, what happens is that there is a fight in the end between Achilles and I think it is Hector. Okay. Now, when Achilles kills Hector and he drags him towards his own tent, thereafter gives the body to Hector's father Priam, and then they have a 13-day ceremony for the passed out person. Very interestingly, this is similar to what we follow, but this is 2000, 3000 years ago. So the Greeks also had a similar thing which has been subsumed by the Abrahamic thought of heaven and hell. Okay. Now, but as far as the Eastern things are concerned, the Buddhists, we cannot take China as a case because China has gone through a lot of turbulence. There's a lot of difference in way they think. So we cannot really compare. We cannot say that Chinese have lost everything because Chinese, if you look at Chinese wuxia dramas and Jianxia dramas, there is a lot of ancestral, there's a lot of emphasis on ancestors in those dramas as well. So obviously they have not let it go. Now, it would be inappropriate to say that the Eastern cultures have all, it's only in India. In the North, it used, this is a question which I have in my mind which nobody has been able to answer. During Mahabharata war, when each of the soldiers died, how did they perform the last rites? Because the war was there for 18 days, I think. Now, how did they perform the last rites during that particular period? Or did the bodies get removed from the battlefield and then in the end everybody's last rites was done? Another thing that interesting thing that you will notice is that when one of the sons of Arjuna, I forget, he is the child of Arjuna and a Naga lady, and he comes to Kurukshetra and he says, "I'm Arjuna's son," and they say that, "Who are you? Can you fight?" He says, I'm the son of a snake. I can only hiss and I can throw poison." He says, "This is going to be a big fight, boss. You are not useful for this." So he says that. So what they do is he is they say he says that I can become narabali, I can be a bali for the before the this, and so they are all very fascinated. They say, "Okay, what do you want out of this?" So he says, "I would like to watch the battle," but they cannot do narabali of him unless he is married. So he marries, he becomes, he impregnates his, and who will marry him? So Sri Krishna becomes a female. Then he marries this person, and I forget the name. So there it is, son of Ulupi and Arjuna. See, Vidya madam, there you have it. And he is given as Narabali, watches the battle. Why? Because when he dies, somebody must be there to do his last rites. So it's very interesting that we don't actually, it is not as simple as what we think it is. So all civilizations, especially ancient civilizations, have this thing about consciousness, the atma, and the process, the progress of the atma into different other worlds, and that has been corroborated by Dr. Michael Newton, who has done regression of in therapy photos, and you keep uh, I, it's a tricky question. I don't have a complete answer. Correctly, you should not have them, or you should have no attachment to them. I would suppose say that since if you don't have an attachment to them, they become just entities. So maybe the same thing applies to Mahatma Gandhi also. That it's just an entity. You just now is no longer a somebody with a personal karma attachment that you have. So it's just another name for a road or a place, and so it should not. Yeah, I mean it's a fantastic question that you have asked. The issue is your attachment to the person. You see, the issue is not, we continuously keep thinking about personalities. This is not about personalities. You have to go beyond the personality into the realm of the Purusha, the soul talking to the soul. Like, for instance, if I have had a relationship with my great grandfather, then I know him as an individual, no? So that relationship is what becomes the anchor of my tarpanam. However, as Lata madam said, that maybe when you don't have a relationship with him, having his photo does not impact you. So it doesn't matter. Tarpanam that we do is for direct lineage. That is, people whom we have directly had contact with. Like my great grandfather was alive when I was born. So he possibly held me. So I have a karmic attachment. A karma has been done. If he held me, he played with me, then my soul has been attached to him in terms of karma, which I have to then repay by performing tarpanam and shraddham. But my great grandfather was definitely not alive. So the issue here is karma. We are talking karma. So karma is when there is a direct association. So like when with Mahatma Gandhi, there is no direct association. He is just an entity. Similarly, the photo that I have, for me, my father's photo is personal. So I am doing tarpanam. But for my children who did not see him, it does not matter. He is just another photograph. There is no karma. Yeah, but we must do our tarpanam and our shraddham, and that one thing is has come as clarity to me also. For a long time, I was not very sure, but the more I studied this subject, it became very clear to me that we should not be the debt of birth and the debt of association. These karmas we have with our people, especially primary relationships, and they have to be completely. We have to dissolve them in the right manner. Your association with your body is the problem, no. Which is what throughout Srimad Bhagavad Gita he keeps on saying: remove this attachment you have, all the desires. The minute you are without desires, nirahankara, then there is no problem. First 13 days, anybody can do it. Okay. Now the question is, why do we have this in our system? You have to go back to Vivaha Sanskara for this. During Vivaha Sanskara, what happens is on the previous day, we do Punya Vachanam and Nandi Shraddham and things like that. The boy is the basic idea is that during Upanayana Samskara, the boy leaves the home and he goes to the Gurukul to learn the Vedas as per his pravara. That means, for instance, I am Yajurveda Apastamba Sutra. That is my Shaka. So all the last rites, all the rites which I perform will follow that particular path. The Sanskritam and the various mantras will conform to that part. Suppose there is somebody who is Samavedi, he will learn all the samskaras as per Samaveda. Now, what happens is that because he has learnt all of this, the girl, other than alternatively, she is at home, she is actually learning the chores from her mother. How to keep a home. She's dharma. So the fire belongs to her. So she is all the time imbibing the harmony of the home. And what happens during marriages, her gotra becomes that of the boys for the fundamental reason that the samskara will be followed according to the training given to the boy. But the dharma of the home is that of the girl. The way the girl will run the house is the way the temperature of the house will function, the harmony of the house will function. So when the death happens, the boy's samskara is what is used for cremating and other this. So similarly, the father's side, the girl's father, when he dies, his karma as per his samskara has to be performed. That is, his aupasana has to be aupasana agni has to be performed. That is, if he is, let us say, no, my father-in-law is Samaveda, I am Yajurveda. The male and the female are not considered as separate. The male and the female are considered as a composite entity. This is the fundamental difference between the way we function and the rest of the world functions. In our system, there is no difference between the male and the female. The system that is used to perform the yajna is done by the male. But when I'm, like for instance, when I'm doing shraddha, when I'm doing sankalpam, my without my wife, I cannot take sankalpam. Without my wife giving the fire, I cannot do a homa. So what happens? My wife will give the fire, then she will touch me with a darbe. I will take before I take the sankalpam. I will do atmane namaha, and I'll do for both of us. So that means we are a united soul. We are not separate. And that marriage will end only when one of us dies. And the first person who dies, the cremation, the aupasana agni is done used to cremate that person. After that, some other agni is used to cremate the remaining person. Because once the aupasana agni is over, the marriage is over. The vivaha samskara is finished. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this is think that I am being left out of this is incorrect.